Well, welcome back to Crazy Critters with Joe Kenney. And we have something here that you're looking at now is a gray parrot. Is this an African gray, Joe?
So yeah, this is an African gray parrot. There's two types of African gray parrot. So this is what we call a Congo African gray. The other one's a Timna African gray. You can usually kind of tell the difference. The Congo grays are usually a little bit lighter, and if I can open up her little butt fingers there, she's got a little red tail going on down there. Step up, ready? And this one's name is Bongo. He's actually somewhere around 25-ish. I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, well, parrots are long-lived critters.
Yeah, they're very long-lived animals, right? So in general, parrots average around 60 years, some of them longer, like some of your bigger guys can go a little bit longer. The African grays, maybe we're looking around 50, 60 years. So they're long-lived pets. And they're sometimes seen as like a really, like kind of a fancy pet. They make like a great little pet for your house. Not always the case, right? As you very well may know.
They are very much individuals.
Yeah, so parrots are definitely an individual type animal, right? Some of them like certain people, some of them are super loud, some of them love to chew things, they can be destructive. Right now, Bongo's actually one of my better ones. She's very well behaved. We can give her a little nut, see if she'll take that for me. And they have a little spinner around. You'll get you guys checking her out, right? These little guys, right, are super smart birds. They're actually considered to be one of the smarter of the parrots. Some studies say these guys are as smart as a 5-year-old, which is pretty crazy to think about.
Doesn't have any troubles getting the peanuts out of her.
No, definitely gets the peanuts out of her. She loves her peanuts. Those are kind of like a treat for her, right? So we always think about birds eating seeds and stuff like that. Actually, most of her diet is fruits and veggies. She does bean sprouts, one of her favorites.
Hey, I like those too.
Yeah,
you know?
Right? Very good, right? And she's going to get the other, like the fruits, the veggies. She'll even get things like yogurt once in a while. Applesauce she loves. So she's eating a little bit of a varied diet. In the wild, they'd eat a lot of your buds and seeds, things like that are blooming on your trees. They're eating even flowers, right? So they have a wide variety of food. Now, these guys are super cool. They have some weird adaptations that have really made them successful. In Africa, right, they live in pretty big groups. So they live in kind of like a colony, and then that colony will have like almost like sub-families in it.
Yeah.
So I always say it's kind of like our towns, right? They have a whole town full of birds, right? And then you live in your house and you're your close family members. So these guys bond for life, and they'll stay with their mate, their pair, for most of their reproductive life. Unless something happens to another one, then, you know, he just moves on to the next girl, right? Or she moves on to the next guy. That's just how they work. But in general, kind of like human beings, very, very similar. They have very similar social structures with the family units. They're going to live in that big group. That group gives them protection. So when these guys land down on the ground, they're looking for foraging in the leaf litter, looking for some fresh seeds or something like that off the ground. Right? Having a big group is great because it's like you have a whole bunch of eyes looking out for you. So it's not just you watching you, it's everyone, right? So they also have an incredible ability to mimic. So the African gray probably is one of the best talking birds in the world. Maybe not the best. I think the best probably up there with the ravens. Ravens are crazy, right? Yeah. But these guys, as far as parrots go, they're really the big talkers. And these guys can learn to mimic all kinds of sounds. They can mimic phone calls, alarms.
I have some actual experience with that. Marie Layler, who, the late Marie Layler, I should say, who was one of the board of directors at the Dyer Library, was a good friend of mine, and we worked on some projects together. And every time I'd call her, that's when the bird would start to speak up, and you can hear him in the background the whole time. And she'd be having a conversation with the parrot and me at the same time.
Yeah, so it's pretty common. So African grays in particular like sounds. So they'll mimic ringtones, they'll mimic all kinds of things. This guy is pretty good about doing mimicking ringtones. And also, every time that phone rings, it says, hello, right? Hello, right? Or it says, what's up, right?
Mimicking you, answering
mimicking
the
me,
phone.
answering the phone, being in the room all the time. It actually will mimic my voice pretty well. Out here, it's a kind of, as much as it's just hanging out eating its nuts there, right? It's actually a pretty shy African gray, so when she's out and about, she's pretty quiet.
She'll take
oh yeah, you can
peanut
give her.
from me?
We got some peanuts and grapes down there. She'll definitely take them
we'll
from
give
you.
her-
She'll step right up on you.
Great. Here, come on. What's a bongo? Come on, here's a grape for you.
So you want? Yeah, he's like distracted. He's like, whose hand
No.
is this?
Yeah, I'll put it down.
If you put your
there
hand
for
up there, she'll say, step up. She should. If I can reach out there.
Well,
Come on
she-
up, you.
she-
Ready?
she knows you better than she knows
she
me.
definitely knows me better. And birds definitely know people, but she'll step up
Come on,
on you.
step up.
Step up.
Step up. That's a girl.
There you go.
Come on.
Up.
That's a girl.
Put those feet on there. There you go.
There you
right?
go.
They'll definitely know one person from another. So she knows that that's not me. They can recognize facial recognition and stuff like that. They're just a really neat bird, and that intelligence that they have is actually an adaptation to keep them alive. So just like humans, we're a really smart species, right? And we use that to survive, and that's why we thrive, right? If we were thrown out in the jungle, there's a lot of animals that would eat us. But we're pretty smart, so we can survive and build civilizations and groups, and that's kind of what these guys rely on, is that really, really high level of intelligence to stay alive. They're also, right now, one of the most smuggled animals in the world. These guys used to be very popular pets, right? I think you were saying your sister had one, right?
Yeah.
So these little guys were very, very popular pets. They're now considered an endangered species. They're protected under the CITES laws, which kind of regulates the trade on them. So these guys can't be brought out of Africa except under some specific situations.
There are enough bird
And-
fanciers in this country so that they're breeding
yeah,
in here,
so
too,
the ones that are here in the United States are getting bred and reproducing. There's probably still some that are getting smuggled in through the illegal trade. But now, with captive breeding and stuff like that, they've become a little bit less common, and they're a little bit more of a unique pet, as opposed to what they probably were back in the 80s and 90s when they were in almost every pet shop.
Yeah.
But it's really, really important doing some of that conservation work, protecting these guys in their home, because I think it's said that around 22 to 25% of these guys were being collected and shipped out of Africa every year.
Yeah.
Right? So that's a big population of them getting captured and sent out. And in that case, like, the captive bred ones do great. They're very friendly. These birds are coming in. They're scared. They're not in the greatest health. They've been shipped all over the place. So it really wasn't very good on the bird's health either. I always recommend, people ask me a lot about getting pet parrots. And parrots are super cool animals, right? Very smart, very rewarding pets, but it's a long commitment, right? They're destructive.
Yes.
They can be, all right, they can be just very destructive. I've replaced a lot of windowsills over the years.
Yeah.
And these guys will shred through wood, they'll shred through
yeah.
curtains, they'll shred through your drywall, right? So they got to really be watched. And like we said, they're really intelligent, so you got to provide them with a lot of toys and entertainment, right?
Yeah,
To really keep them
my
going.
sister's cockatoo has got more jingly stuff
Yeah.
put up in his cage for that bird to play with, and
Yeah, so they need that. They need like the wood to chew on.
Yeah.
They need the jingly stuff, make noises, really stimulate them. So they're an animal that's a really long commitment. It's something that I really, really recommend that people think about before just going out and like spontaneously getting one. We figure we get a dog, and that's a long commitment, right? You're looking at 10, 15 years, right? With one of these
60
guys,
years
this is
is
your
a-
whole life, right?
Yeah.
So maybe your grandkids are getting them. And they are relatively expensive now. So an African gray right now is usually around $5,000 up to about $7,000, which is pretty expensive animals.
how are they as far as health goes? I mean, because
So-
you want if they get sick, you want to be able
Yeah,
to
so
know
as far
you're
as
going
health
to a vet
goes,
that can
right?
actually
So
do
there are
something
some
with them.
great vets out there for birds. They've been kept, they're one of the pets that's been around for the longest, right? Go back in time, a lot of even ancient civilizations, pirates, right? They say So what I've heard, I'm not 100% sure, I'm not a pirate, so I don't know. But, right, they say when people said it was like worth its weight in gold kind of thing, was one of the pirate things for parrots. They'd get traded through the Caribbean, they'd collect these parrots, and it was kind of like a symbol of wealth and luxury, right? To walk around with a parrot on your shoulder was like walking around with a Rolex. So these guys were kind of like the fancy thing. And at that time, these guys were collected out of a little tree hole, hand raised by a person, and that's how they became friendly, right? Yeah. So it put a lot of work in to get a bird that would sit on your shoulder and talk to you, right? So that's really where these guys kind of originally got their mark in the trade, was pirates, right?
Yeah. And one of the most famous ones was the 1930s version of Treasure Island.
Treasure Island, right? Now more like the Pirates of the Caribbean, there's even a parrot in there, right?
Yeah.
Like almost all of them, right?
It's like if you want to be a pirate, you've got to have
the parrot, right? It goes hand in hand, right? And but they are kind of cool. In a lot of cultures, these guys are seen as a guardian. Birds in general, they say that they keep track of things, they can talk, they'll report on things. So in Africa, one of the cultural ideas behind these guys being kept as pets is that they like report on people in your house. I don't believe that at all, right? They're not telling me what's going on. They're doing a lot of mimicking. They're not really telling you a story, right?
It's great for a Hollywood script, though.
Yeah.
And I have seen it more than once.
I definitely see it more than once. One of those things that I think is a lot more fiction than reality, right? I've heard stories of parrots ordering things on Amazon through Alexa, right? All kinds of funny things. And I mean, that would probably happen. I say, hey, Alexa, right? And order up something. But these guys are really, really intelligent, but we got to remember there's a lot of commitment, and there's something that really needs to be kind of kept an eye on. So, pretty cool little guys.
Okay, well, I think we've come to the end of talking about the parrots. It's time to show something else. So we're going to take a little break, and when we come back, we'll have another animal for you. Well, here we are now. We've got something that's a little kind of buggy for you to take a look at. This is called a whip scorpion.
Yes.
Or maybe even more so, a tailless whip scorpion. And you want to get into a little bit of how it got that name?
So we'll talk a little bit about these guys. These guys are super cool. This is a South American variety, and these little guys are weird little arachnids. So they kind of resemble a scorpion in some ways, maybe a spider. A lot of times I have kids tell me they kind of look like your daddy long legs with the strange legs, a little circular
with
body.
That long antenna that's sticking out
and they're really closely related to our daddy long legs here. But they are different, right? They have some crazy adaptations that make them very unique. We'll kind of scoot them back so you can see them a bit better here. And one of them is that very long extended arm. Yeah. Now this one is actually missing part of one of those arms. Right down here would be another little feeler coming out. But this one must have lost it at some point or another. And the really, really cool thing with a lot of these insects is they can grow that back. They'll kind of grow that back as time goes. But the other really cool things that make them an arachnid, right, are going to be the fact that it has 8 legs.
Yeah.
Now, when you look at them, it kind of a little bit throws you, right? So they have what looks like 1, 2, 3 on each side. Those long feelers are actually their 4th leg. Mm-hmm. And we were kind of pointing, I'm going to spin them around, hopefully, right? These guys can be a little bit quick. So, right, if we spin them around there, you'll see these little like pinchery looking things down in the front, right? And those little pinchery looking things are called chelicerae. Kind of a big word, right?
Okay,
and that's the same thing.
I know where this is going.
Yeah, they're kind of like a spider has, right? Yeah. They're what they use for eating. It's part of their mouth. And if I can grab him here, we're going to kind of block him for a second just so he doesn't go running off on you. But we can see if we can get him to, if I give him a little, quite the quick little one, right? These guys are pretty fast. But I can see if I can get him to.
Trying to grab you now.
Yeah, so you can see.
I'm going to eat this thing.
If I get him to open up, he'll actually open up those little chelicerae, and he'll use them almost like to defend himself. He'll kind of pop those down, right? And he's trying to make a run for it. But he uses those as like a defense.
Yep.
And inside between those, he's
there he
actually
goes. He's
got
going at you
quite
with
a
them.
few little spiny things, right? Those are made for grabbing his food and really pulling them in, right? So as he's going, right, he's going to kind of scoop his food right into his mouth. So it's kind of tucked down in there, and then he kind of pulls that food apart, swallows it in. He eats a lot of insects, stuff like that. Now, one of the things that I think is pretty cool, I've seen these guys in the wild out in Costa Rica. I've also seen them in my hotel room in Costa Rica, right? So these little guys are...
They get everywhere.
Yeah, they get a little bit of everywhere. They like kind of dark, cool areas, moist spots, so a lot of times they'll tuck up behind bureaus and stuff like that in some of their range. But naturally, you find them a lot stuck inside like the crevices of trees, kind of under flat things. So their body is made to be able to like flatten out. So when he's walking upright, he's kind of he's up off my fingers a little bit here, right? But he can also like flatten out and be almost like paper thin, right? So these guys can really squeeze in those really tight spots to stay protected. They'll go underneath the bark and stuff like that. And they're also pretty neat that these guys will actually live in small groups on the trees a lot. So you'll find like not just one, but you might find like, peel back that bark and find 10 of them hanging out under there. And they can get pretty big. This one is got a little bit of growing to do. But if I was walking around out in the backyard and I saw that crawling across the ground, I'd say it was a pretty big bug, right?
Yeah.
Or at least for around here. But I do think they're really, really neat things. They have a soft body. Do you want to try to hold it? It feels kind of cool, right? We'll slide it on over there, right? They'll give you a little tickle, right? And hopefully it doesn't go running up your arm too fast. But they are very unique animals. And they have tiny little hooks on the bottom of their feet that allow them kind of stick on you, climb on
Kind
through.
of like spiders do when they're walking up the ceiling.
That's right. So spiders do too, right? Tiny little like hooked claws, right?
Come on.
And that's what allows them to stick to things, climb, right? A lot of people think their toes are sticky. They're not. You can probably feel it like kind of clinging to you. Yeah. And they do have several eyes.
Kind of like the chameleon on the last show.
Yeah, like the chameleon on the last show, hanging in there, right? And in the front down there is where their eyes would be located, just like a spider. They have several eyes, and they kind of all function together as one. I couldn't even guess as to how they see. I've seen a lot of people try to put that together.
I'm
I
surprised
don't know.
Hollywood hasn't come up with a version of this for a
So they
movie
have. So
far.
I think they use these in some of the Harry Potter films.
Oh, okay.
They've used,
creeping around like that.
Creeping around across the desks and stuff like that. They've modeled some other things after some of them, but they are very alien looking, right?
Oh, yeah.
But it's pretty crazy to think these things live in our world, right? We have a couple of different species of them. They're through Africa, Asia, and South America. Pretty much all the tropics, but we can...
And they kind of feed themselves the way Homer Simpson feeds himself donuts.
Yeah,
right?
kind of scooping it all in, right? Shoveling that food down and in. So at home, one of his favorite things to eat are these little like grub-looking things we call waxworms. It's pretty funny though. They eat them up like candy. Like they're sucking them in. They might have two of them in their hand at the same time. And it's fascinating to watch how they'll actually manipulate that bug to kind of stuff it in their mouth and kind of slurp it up, a little slurry. Yeah. But as scary as they are, guys, they're actually completely harmless. They can't bite you, they can't sting you, they don't do anything else harmful. They just kind of look a little bit freaky.
Hey, he seems to be pretty content sitting there on my arm at the moment.
Yeah, he'll settle down, nice and relaxed.
Well, if he's taking a nap, maybe it's time for us to change and go to another animal.
We can do that.
Okay, so we're going to do that. We'll take that break and bring something else out, and we'll be right back. Well, we're back, and we've got a nice little frog here that I'm going to keep away from because I'm not wearing protection. He's got, well, you'll have to tell
All right,
about
guys.
this guy.
So This little guy here is a fascinating little frog. It is what we call one of the dart frogs. He's darting around right now, but yeah, that's not how they get their name. But these little guys are super cool. So this is a green and black dart frog, or green and black poison dart frog, right?
Yep.
And these guys are fascinating little frogs. They're kind of like a tree frog, right? They have little sticky toe pads on them. They have very strange toes for a frog. So these guys are actually lacking the typical webbing you'd see between frogs, and they have more of like that gecko-y type foot.
Well, this tree frog, they don't need to have the webbing because they're not swimming, right?
That's right. So these guys aren't swimming like your typical frog you'd find out in the backyard. Whoa, he's hopping like one of those guys today, right? These little tiny things are super, super cool. They have some crazy adaptations. One, they have some bright colors. He's keeping me on my toes, right?
Yeah.
But he's got those very bright colors in there, and those bright colors act as a warning. So your dart frogs are naturally very toxic frogs. So we'll grab him. I'm gonna grab him so we can kind of see him here for a second. We'll hold him. Hold him a little bit more.
He's not being cooperative at all, is he?
No, not at all. But I'm gonna hold his little legs here so we can hold him on. But these little tiny guys are very strange animals. They have a crazy array of color to them, right? If I tilt them back, you can kind of see that weird black and green pattern on these guys. And they are highly toxic in the wild. Now, home, this guy is captive bred. They'reung in captive environments. They're eating fruit flies for the most part, little tiny beetles, stuff like that. In the wild, they're eating a lot of very toxic insects, ants, termites, some tiny little aphids and stuff like that that are producing chemicals. And they actually...
So that's how they get their toxicity, is they get it from what they're eating.
That's right. So they're eating their toxic foods, and then they're kind of absorbing that toxin into them and secreting it through their skin. And you can actually take a wild one of these guys, put it in a captive situation, and it'll lose its toxic attributes. Now, these little guys are one of the more commonly known ones. These are Costa Rican species, and we can usually tell that from that green and black colors. Some of the other ones in the same family from other parts of their range have slightly more blue tinge to them. Incredibly fast little jumpers. Yeah. And for a tiny little thing, you're probably noticing this a little bit too, they got a really long jump to them. A lot of times these guys will dig out little burrows and they'll sit right outside of them. So if they get scared, they're actually going to tuck down into that burrow. But secondly, if something picks this guy up and tries to eat him, right, he's got that super toxic mucus that's going to be coming out of him and giving us a little bit of a scare. Now, I'm going to try to grab him again.
This is the same type of frog that the Indians in the Amazon get the curare from, that they poison their darts with, right?
So these guys, like some of the native tribes throughout their range, have used these guys for a long time. That's why we call them a dart frog, right? And some of them, what they would do is they'd actually take one of these frogs, you'd hold onto it, like I'm doing here, you'd rub your little spear tip on it, right? And it would actually collect that mucus on there. So then they'd put them on like their blow dart gun or their arrow, right? Yeah. And they'd go out, they could go for a hunt, and as soon as that animal is hit with the dart, right, not only is that dart gonna take effect, right, like hunting with a bow, but it's also the toxins are gonna kick in, and that'll help them be a little bit more successful in their hunting, especially with fast-moving animals. So it is a little bit strange, but right, these guys are also a really neat species. They have the bright colors and all that kind of fun stuff, but they also rely on bromeliads. So these guys in their environment are going to breed in little tiny puddles, so they stay relatively close. There's some of these that are found only in areas smaller than an average town, right? They might be found in one little riverbed, or they might be found along one little section of a stream. And they have a lot of different species that actually need quite a bit of protection. They're also really sensitive. So I'm wearing gloves right now to handle this guy, and it's actually not for me, it's for the frog, right?
Oh.
So for me, I could take this frog, I could eat him. And it's not going to be a good day, right? He's not going to taste that good. It's going to be a bad day for the frog, but he's not going to hurt me, right? These guys don't produce that chemical as a pet. But they do have super sensitive skin. So that skin can actually dry out relatively quick. They need to stay wet. So they need to stay moist and have that wet skin going on.
Somebody with dry skin holding that thing could soak
Yeah,
up
so
the
that's
moisture from his
exactly.
skin.
Your dry skin can actually suck the moisture out of him enough that it can be really damaging. It can also, like the oils on our hands, can clog up some of the pores on his skin. So that's why we usually use gloves when we're handling something, especially as sensitive as this.
Yeah.
Some frogs, I don't really mind. You find a big old bullfrog in the backyard, it's not going to hurt him a bit to pick him up and touch him with your hand, right? But a little guy like this, sucking up a little bit of water, could make a big difference.
Yeah.
I just think they're a really neat little species and something we see a lot in the books and stuff as kids. You're really big representation of like the true rainforests. And it really does need to be a healthy, clean environment for these guys to really thrive. I just think they're neat.
Looks like he's calming down a little bit.
Yeah, he's kind of sitting still, right? Yeah, he's being pretty good for us for a second at least. But just a neat little guy. We can show you another strange one in just a second that's a little bit different, also uses some pretty cool colors to help him stay safe.
We're coming down to the end of things, so if we take another quick break to bring out the next frog or whatever we're going to be bringing out here, we'll have a couple minutes to talk about him, and then we're all done with another episode.
Perfect.
Now here we have another snake, and this one is going to look similar to what people know of as the coral snake, which is a very poisonous snake, but that's his protection. That's a milk snake.
Yeah, guys, so this guy here is called a Pueblan milk snake, also Central American kind of critter. And these guys use those colors just like that dart frog was using, and is actually a toxic animal. This guy uses those colors to kind of trick animals into thinking he's toxic.
Yeah.
A lot of times, really toxic animals have those bright colors, and they kind of stick out as opposed to blend in. And that actually keeps them safe and protected. So this guy is kind of mimicking those colors, sticking out, and making himself look really dangerous, but he's actually a harmless species. He eats mice, rats, kind of helpful little guy.
Yeah.
But they are just a neat little guy.
Anything that's going to eat a rat has my vote of approval.
Yeah, right. Well, we're all for that, guys. But these guys are just one of those ones that I think are a really neat one, and something that we often think about everything that's bright colors as being kind of dangerous, right? And a lot of people use this guy as a great example as to how things have evolved to kind of use those same colors.
This is the fake
but to
out
kind of
snake.
trick. Yeah, he kind of fakes you out, right? He's kind of like throwing on a disguise, and it's really something that helps keep him safe and protected. This one's name is Houdini. He's a pretty good escape artist. He's made his way through many cages. The milk snakes are very good at squeezing through things, making runs. I actually get quite a few calls for people that end up with milk snakes in their garages or their basements this time of year because they're so good at getting through little holes. He's even got that cool, you can see his belly down there, right guys? Yeah. That cool pattern goes all the way down through the belly, all the way down and around. Just a neat animal with some really cool color changing.
And we are out of time now. I mean, we have had such a great time on this show. Had seen some really crazy critters. I mean, you talk about crazy critters, it's a perfect name for this show.
Yeah, we definitely get some odd ones here.
So we will be back again with more crazy critters for you to watch and learn about. So have a good time and join us for the next episode.